This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Thank you for staying with us. Tensions rising between the U.S. and Iran. President Trump now issuing a warning to Tehran as protests against the Iranian regime reportedly turned deadly. Mari Otsu has more from the White House for us. Mari, good afternoon.
Don, good afternoon. Yeah, that's right. Those protests in Iran have been growing throughout the week, and there are now reports that 7 people have been killed. Merchants, students, and shop owners are protesting runaway inflation and a currency that's lost 40% of its value since Israel launched its 12-day war, which was supported by those American B-2 bombers, Tomahawk missiles, and stealth fighter jets. And as you mentioned, President Trump today is issuing this warning to Iran, posting on Truth Social a little bit before 3 a.m. Palm Beach time, saying, quote, if Iran shoots and violently kills what he calls peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. He says, we are locked and loaded and ready to go. And here's President Trump on Monday in his greeting to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, responding to a reporter asking if he would support an overthrow of the Iranian regime. Take a look.
I'm not going to talk about overthrow of a regime. They've got a lot of problems that are in. They have tremendous inflation. Their economy is bust. Their economy is no good. And I know that people aren't so happy, but don't forget, every time they have a riot or somebody forms a group, little or big, they start shooting people. Now I hear that Iran is trying to build up again, and if they are, we're going to have to knock them down. We'll knock them down. We'll knock the hell out of them, but hopefully that's not happening.
And Iranian officials are now responding to President Trump's statement, issuing stern warnings against U.S. intervention. Iran's national security chief saying on X that American interference would trigger, quote, disruption across the entire region and destruction of American interests. Don?
Okay, Mari, what else do you have for us?
So this is also the second largest number of fighter jets just deployed by the CCP, with 130 warplanes and 22 ships, according to Taiwan's defense ministry. The U.S. State Department has been condemning the CCP's military exercises encircling Taiwan, saying, quote, military activities and rhetoric toward Taiwan and others in the region increase tensions unnecessarily. We urge Beijing to exercise restraint, cease its military pressure against Taiwan, and instead engage in meaningful dialogue. And this is coming as a Chinese Communist Party leader, Xi Jinping, in his New Year's Eve speech in Beijing, said that he vowed to reunify China and Taiwan. And he's speaking just a day after the conclusion of those military drills. President Trump has previously projected deterrence on this issue, and the U.S. has been committed for decades to ensuring Taiwan's self-defense. Take a look.
I know you have said that Xi Jinping wouldn't dare move militarily on Taiwan while you're in office. But what if he does? Would you order U.S. forces to defend Taiwan?
You'll find out if it happens. And he understands the answer to that. They understand what's going to happen. And he has openly said, and his people have openly said at meetings, we would never do anything while President Trump is president, because they know the consequences.
The military drills come just days after Washington approved a record $11 billion arms deal with Taiwan. And tonight, President Trump is set to meet in the evening with the U.S. ambassador to China, David Perdue, at his Mar-a-Lago estate. Don, back to you.
Okay, Mari, thank you. Amid increased U.S. pressure, the Venezuelan regime of Nicolas Maduro signals it is willing to negotiate with the Trump administration. Here's more.
After more than 3 months of U.S. strikes on narco vessels, the seizure of a sanctioned oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, and the first confirmed land strike on Venezuelan soil, the Maduro regime has signaled it is willing to negotiate with the Trump administration.
The U.S. government knows, because we've told many of their spokespeople, that if they want to seriously discuss an agreement to combat drug trafficking, we're ready. If they want oil, Venezuela is ready for U.S. investment, like with Chevron, whenever they want it, wherever they want it, and however they want it.
Russia and China continue to assist the Venezuelan regime. This week, a sanctioned oil tanker being pursued by the U.S. military suddenly appeared in the Russian ship registry, and 2 Chinese oil tankers are now en route to Venezuela due to arrive mid-January despite the blockade.
Le hemos comprado al imperialismo.
We have not taken the bait from those provocations from the imperialism. We will keep doing what we have to do every day. We are doing things we had never done before. There is a large group of scientists improving our high-technology equipment, aerial, land-based, air defense.
The U.S. has continued to increase its military presence in the Caribbean after the Trump administration confirmed the first land strike on Venezuelan soil.
There was a major explosion in the dock area where they load the boats up with drugs. They load the boats up with drugs, so we hit all the boats, and now we hit the area. It's the implementation area. That's where they implement, and that is no longer around.
The president is capable of reaching a national security finding and directive that would encompass this kind of strike, but he should provide thorough briefing to the oversight committees, to the relevant members of Congress who are responsible for funding and authorizing such action, and he has not done so.
The Venezuelan regime has also reportedly detained 5 American citizens, a move that the regime has used in the past to increase its leverage when negotiating with the United States. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
President Trump pledged that the U.S. will rescue protesters in Iran if they're attacked and killed by the Iranian regime. Joining us to discuss is Brian Lieb, foreign policy analyst and CEO of Henry Public Relations. Good afternoon and Happy New Year to you, of course. Can I just ask you, because the president said the U.S. was locked and loaded and ready to go and will come to their rescue. What do you think this could mean?
Hey, Don, Happy New Year to you and Happy New Year to the NTD audience. I think it means exactly what we all think it means. President Trump is not going to stand on the sidelines as the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Ayatollahs in Iran murder their own citizens once again, which has already started to happen. Several Iranian citizens have been murdered by the regime for the protests that are now into day 6. I think it's a very bold statement from President Trump. And it just kind of goes hand in hand with actually, I think, what I've said on this network many times before, and that President Trump is the ultimate peacemaker. He wants to see peace. And sometimes we have to step in certain ways for there to be peace. But we'll see what happens. But this seems to have a lot of momentum right now, Don, the protests that are happening inside of Iran.
Okay, so Brian, you say President Trump is the greatest peacemaker, but Iranian leaders say Trump's pledge amounts to intervening in Iran's domestic affairs. What is your view?
I think that certainly, could be the case. And I think, you kind of have to look at the situation inside of Iran right now and just be realistic about it. And that, we as the United States of America are not looking to directly affect regime change. But when we see the Iranian people standing up for basic human rights, running water, basic things that we take for granted here in America and a lot of our countries around the world that they don't have in Iran. We as the United States of America, as the bastions of freedom and peace, we need to stand up with other people around the world that are rising up for peace. And there's no regime anywhere else in the world that has been more oppressive towards their own people than the Islamic Republic of Iran. So, I also think, it's important to kind of look at the situation in Iran right now and kind of draw not a comparison, but just kind of ask the question about, what would have happened if the United States of America would have intervened in Nazi Germany when they saw and knew everything that was happening. Is it possible that the Holocaust wouldn't have happened to the extent that it did? Some can argue that. I would say the same thing here, in that, this has the capability for thousands of Iranians to be murdered. And we have an opportunity to potentially step in here and support these people. And I think we should. So I think President Trump has made the right bold statement here, and that has really, I think, given a lot of energy to the Iranian people that, of course, have now seen that statement as well.
Okay, Brian, I'm wondering here if you could help us understand what has been Iran's track record, the regime's track record, when it comes to their method of intervening in protests.
Well, the Iranian people, Don, they rise up like this quite often. In fact, it was just 2 years ago when there was a big uprising because of water shortages. Iranian people were going days and weeks without having even running water. But before that, the biggest one prior to that was in 2019, and the Iranian people really were taking to the streets with the same kind of energy that they are right now as we speak. It was a different president at that time, as you might recall. It was President Barack Obama, and there were opportunities for the United States of America to intervene and to save the Iranian people, and we didn't. And the end result was that something. The conservative numbers, around 1,500 Iranian people were literally murdered in 48 hours on the streets all throughout Iran. Some say the numbers more like 4,000 or 5,000. So that's their track record. You know, the Islamic Republic of Iran, you know, has a track record and a calling card for stifling their own people, for turning off the internet, for hanging people that openly speak out against the regime. So this is not a regime that really brings anything to the world other than oppression. And oh, by the way, as we all know, they're the world's #1 sponsor of terrorism. So yeah, they have quite the track record of oppressing their own people while also funding terrorism all around the world. That's who the Islamic Republic of Iran is.
Okay, so Brian, earlier you said peace potentially is a big motivating factor for Trump. What then is his game plan specifically in this instance to achieve that and for the region overall?
I think that, I don't think a lot of people really probably know what that looks like right now, other than President Trump and some of his closest allies. But if I were to kind of predict the future here a little bit, I would say that maybe it's not the United States that is going to get directly involved in supporting the Iranian people, and perhaps it would be a country like Israel or maybe some other Arab countries that would do something to step in and support the Iranian people, arm the Iranian people. The Israelis in particular, as we saw earlier this year, have the capacity to dominate the skies inside of Iran, as they did during that 12-day mini war. So I think a lot could happen here, but just kind of reading the tea leaves here, I think that the U.S. perhaps would assist in some capacity. I don't think we're putting boots on the ground. We're not going to be putting American soldiers inside of Iran. That's not going to happen. But is it possible that we could be, doing some strategic airstrikes along with Israel to take out IRGC sites? Yeah, I think that's very possible. I think that's something very possible that can happen. And by the way, just a day or two ago, President Trump was asked. I think you might have played it a couple of minutes ago. Played the clip where he was asked, whether or not he was going to let the Islamic Republic of Iran rebuild their nuclear arsenal, whether he was going to allow them to continue to expand their ballistic missile program. And to both of those questions, he said very emphatically that no, he is not, and he is prepared to move quickly. I think he said ASAP, or very quickly, fast. He said fast to take those sites out. So time will tell here, but I think we all, just need to look at the situation happening inside of Iran right now, and you have so many brave young men and women in Iran that are rising up, knowing that they could very easily be met with bullets right now, and they are once again risking their lives for basic human dignity, human liberties, and freedoms that we have. And I think that we should all be supporting them.
Okay, well said. I just want to ask you one last thing here. Do you think Trump's pledge sends a message to other authoritarian countries like China, for example, which also has a record of using violence towards protesters, that he's willing to stand up for them?
I think it does. I think President Trump is ready, willing, and able to stand up for anyone around the world that wants peace and stand up against oppressive regimes, whether that is the mullahs in Tehran or Maduro in Venezuela or the CCP. I think he's ready, willing, and able to stand up for the people of the world. And I think that's something very real. I think that's something that he really believes in. And I don't think that he views it as regime change. I think that he views it as standing up for what's right. And we need to be, the United States of America doesn't have to be the world police, but we can certainly send messages that we're going to stand up and support people like the freedom-seeking Iranian people, like the Venezuelans, like the Chinese people that have been oppressed by the CCP as well. And I think that's very important because when we speak, the world listens. So time will tell in terms of how things unfold here, but I think we should all be watching this very closely.
Well, all right, Brian, again, well said. Thank you so much for speaking with us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Don. Happy New Year.
You as well. Violence is escalating in Iran. Protests over economic conditions are spreading across the country, leaving multiple people dead. President Trump says the U.S. will come to the rescue if Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters. The president commented on Truth Social today saying, "We are locked and loaded and ready to go." Here's the latest on the unrest in Iran.
At least 7 people have reportedly been killed during unrest in Iran. That's according to Iranian media and rights groups, as the biggest protest to hit the country in 3 years spread across multiple provinces. A semi-official Iranian news agency says at least 3 protesters were killed in western Iran during clashes with security forces. The agency says protesters stormed a police facility and set vehicles on fire. More deaths have been reported in other parts of the country. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says a member of its voluntary unit was killed during the unrest, but rights groups dispute that account, saying the man was a protester killed by security forces. Eyewitness video released Wednesday showed protesters trying to access a government building in southern Iran. The arrest comes amid growing economic strain. The demonstrations began over inflation and the falling value of the rial, Iran's currency. Last weekend, shopkeepers began protesting over rapidly rising prices. Authorities say they are willing to engage in talks with trade unions and merchants. The value of Iran's currency has been in decline for years. According to the government, the inflation rate in December rose to over 42% from the same period the previous year. During that same time, food prices rose by more than 70% and medicines by up to 50%. Iran has faced multiple waves of unrest in recent years, each driven by economic hardship, rising living costs, or demand for political and social reform. Most recently, in 2022 and 23, the death of Masha Amini in police custody set off nationwide protests. She was arrested by the country's morality police for allegedly not wearing a hijab. Human rights groups like Amnesty say previous protests were met with deadly force, with hundreds of people killed. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Mike Waltz said on X, the U.S. stands with Iranians as they protest what he called a radical regime that has brought them nothing but economic downturn and war.
Tensions between Saudi Arabia and the UAE continue to rise. Yemen's Saudi-backed government launched an operation against UAE-backed separatists. Here are the details.
The governor of Yemen's Hadramaut province said on Friday he would launch a peaceful operation to take back military positions from the UAE-backed Southern Transitional Council, or STC, but that the actions were not a declaration of war. This is the latest escalation in Yemen, where a growing split between Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates has been unfolding since December. The two Gulf powers back opposing sides in the conflict. Once the twin pillars of regional security, the two have seen their interests diverge on everything from oil quotas to geopolitical influence. Yemen's Saudi-backed government appointed Governor Salem Ahmed Saeed al-Kunbashi to command the Homeland Shield Forces, giving him full military, security, and administrative authority to restore order. The UAE-supported STC responded that its forces were on full alert and ready to respond forcefully. Last month, the STC seized large parts of southern Yemen from the Saudi-backed government. The move was seen as a threat. Last week, the UAE said it was pulling its remaining forces out of Yemen after Saudi Arabia demanded they leave within 24 hours, marking one of the most severe public disagreements between the two countries. Meanwhile, a halt in flights at Aden International Airport on Thursday continued into Friday, as both sides traded blame as to who was responsible for the air traffic shutdown. Aden's international airport is the main gateway for regions of the country outside Houthi control.
The State Department is calling on the Chinese regime to stop military pressure on Taiwan. The department says military activities and rhetoric toward Taiwan and others in the region increase tension unnecessarily. The comments come a day after China's military wrapped a 2-day exercise encircling Taiwan. Beijing fired missiles and sent a large number of warplanes and naval vessels near the island. Taiwan has pledged to strengthen its defenses and protect its sovereignty. President Lai Ching-te called for unity at home following the war drills. And Lockheed Martin has been awarded a new contract to boost Taiwan's military power. In a news release, the Pentagon said it is issuing a $328 million contract to meet the urgent needs of Taiwan's Air Force. This will include 55 infrared search and track Legion-enhanced sensor pods and processors. These are multifunction sensor systems that support targeting operations when radar is unavailable. The work is expected to be completed in Florida by the summer of 2031. This military contract comes as the island has faced increased military pressure from China. Just recently, Beijing executed large-scale military drills around the island nation. Tesla appears to be running out of charge in the EV market as China's BYD gains momentum. Tesla has ceded its title as world's top electric vehicle maker to BYD after Tesla's annual sales fell for a second year in a row. This comes on top of intensifying competition, expired U.S. tax credits for EVs, and brand backlash due to CEO Elon Musk's political views. Global EV sales rose 28% last year, and for the first time, BYD outsold Tesla on an annual basis. This was fueled by growth in Europe. BYD reports that sales outside of China have climbed to a record 1 million vehicles last year. That's up 150% from the year before. And a look now at the weather. More snowfall is expected in parts of New York State, while the Los Angeles area continues to face a risk of flooding. Lake effect snow is hitting parts of New York State, with hazardous travel expected through tomorrow. Snowfall rates are expected to be intense, especially near the Great Lakes. Authorities are warning drivers of dangerous road conditions. Forecasters say some areas could see another foot of snow by the end of the week. Meanwhile, Southern California is on alert as heavy rain raises concerns about flooding and mudslides. While some evacuation warnings have been lifted, flood risks remain. Officials warn of continued flooding and debris flow near wildfire burn scars. In Northern California, a storm system is expected to bring rain this weekend and snow at higher elevations. Good afternoon and thank you for joining us. The FBI, along with the police department of Charlotte-Mecklenburg in North Carolina, successfully stopped a terrorist attack using knives and hammers from happening during New Year's Eve celebrations by a North Carolina man trying to carry out an ISIS-inspired attack on New Year's Eve. Christian Sturdivant, 18 years old, of Mint Hill, North Carolina, was charged with providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization.
What we found was a manifesto, which the federal complaint alleges contained detailed plans to execute a massacre on New Year's Eve as people shop, for the holidays. The JTTF collected evidence showing he turned his back on his country and his fellow citizens by pledging allegiance to ISIS with the intent of becoming a martyr. We allege Sturdivant was willing to sacrifice himself by committing a terrorist attack using knives and a hammer to support the murder, torture, and extreme violence that ISIS represents.
Sturdivant was not yet entered into a plea on the charges. He was arrested on Wednesday, New Year's Eve, and made his first court appearance on Friday. Sturdivant came on the FBI's radar initially in 2022, when, as a juvenile, he was in contact with an unidentified ISIS member overseas and took steps to carry out an attack with a hammer. He was not charged in that incident and instead underwent psychological treatment, according to law enforcement officials.
So Mr. Sturdivant started on the internet. He started reading ISIS material, started going to ISIS websites, making TikTok videos, and eventually reached out to what he thought was a member of ISIS. In reality, was an undercover agent with NYPD in New York. He pledged his allegiance to ISIS with that undercover agent, and he disclosed his plans to, quote, do jihad soon. He then met a second undercover with the FBI, who he also thought was an ISIS participant, and he started to be very specific with his plans. He talked with that undercover agent, again, who he thought was ISIS. He talked about where he was planning to do this attack, which was at a grocery store and a fast food restaurant in Mint Hill, places that we go every day and don't think that we may be harmed. He talked about what means he would use to kill innocent people. He said he was going to wear a Kevlar vest and attack people with knives and hammers. And of course, he talked about when he was going to carry out this attack, which was New Year's Eve.
Prosecutors in Switzerland say sparkler candles likely caused the fire that left about 40 people dead on New Year's Eve. Many of the victims are foreigners. Americans were in the Alpine town as well, but it's not yet clear if any are among the victims. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar is near the Swiss border with more details, and a warning: some viewers may find the following footage disturbing.
People from all over the globe were in Switzerland celebrating when a deadly fire broke out on New Year's Eve. We now have more information on the possible cause of the fire, and investigators are ruling out the possibility of an attack. Rescue aircraft continue flying to and from the Swiss alpine town Crans-Montana on Friday, as many victims still have to be identified. At least 40 people are dead, although some unconfirmed reports say the number is actually closer to 50. 2 witnesses told a French broadcaster that they saw what caused the fire. According to them, a male bartender lifted a female colleague on his shoulders as she held a lit candle in a bottle, which they say started the fire. Swiss prosecutors also say that a candle likely started the fire after being held too close to the ceiling. A survivor of the New Year's tragedy recounts the moment she might have lost her friend.
I saw a friend of mine, and then we saw the fire, and we went straight back up. I grabbed my friend's arm, but then I climbed the stairs and I let go. Now he's not answering me anymore.
An American student on vacation says he could have been a victim if he had made a different decision on New Year's Eve.
It's so close to us that we might have gone there even though we didn't go there. There was a significant chance that we ended up dead because we decided to go party.
Swiss officials say the blaze most likely triggered the release of gases. Those gases then rapidly ignited and caused what firefighters call a flashover or a backdraft. A fire security expert says the tragedy could have been prevented if norms and regulations were followed properly.
It's always the accumulation of having a lot of people who do not necessarily know the site well, who might have consumed alcohol, and then, voila, you have an incident.
Another issue is identifying the victims. A doctor at the local hospital says it's difficult for multiple reasons, partly because it was a public event, so investigators don't know who went there, how many people exactly there were, and even if they had identification on them, the papers most likely burned. So for now, investigations and identifications will continue in Switzerland. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
To discuss the biggest stories to watch for in 2026, joining us is Mike Leon, Director of Strategy for the Free and Equal Elections Foundation and host of Can We Please Talk podcast. And we have Angie Wong, Republican strategist and political columnist. So first of all, good afternoon to you both and Happy New Year as well. Mike, I'll start with you today. Can you just tell us what is on your radar for 2026?
Well, Happy New Year to both of you guys. There's a few things, obviously the midterms, but because it's so later on in the year. But I would go first with the Supreme Court. There's a lot of cases that are going to be heard before the court coming up with respect to birthright citizenship, with respect to the executive branch and the president's authority to fire people, whether it be Lisa Cook, whether it be the FTC commissioner. There's a bunch of cases like that. There's tariffs that are going to be heard. There's a redistricting case that's happening in Louisiana that's going to be heard before the court. So I think there's a lot of Supreme Court. Again, this is top of mind. I just posted something content-wise about this over on a couple different platforms. So I think the Supreme Court, it gets lost in the shuffle sometimes because you get what happens in the fall, and then when you get what happens, in the summertime when the decisions come out. And they just weighed recently on the troop deployment in Chicago, saying that the president doesn't have authority to do that because these are not similar to the LA and DC cases. So Supreme Court is one to watch. That's what I'm watching for in the early half of the year, Don.
So, Angie, what are you looking out for? And are you watching the Supreme Court rulings on birthright citizenship and tariffs as well?
Well, Happy New Year to you both. Yeah, I really like Mike's answer. I mean, I wasn't even thinking Supreme Court, but there's so much coming down, hopefully by April. And I'm looking at the redistricting case because that is going to flip the midterms upside down if it comes in favor of Republicans, and especially if they get rid of the VCA voting, that is the race-based voting. The South will completely change. And so I'm excited because I'm here in Florida. But for my outlook for 2026, I actually have a more kind of poppy, positive view. We've got a lot of good things to look forward to this coming year, including the 250-year anniversary of our country. I mean, we're going to be doing year-long celebrations. I know multiple coalitions are already preparing for that. You see Washington, D.C. completely lit up. My own kids are going to go on a D.C. field trip as part of this 250-year celebration to be more patriotic, so I'm excited about that. We have the FIFA World Cup, so that's going to bring all these nations together. What a great way of doing soft power. Here in Miami, we're doing, I think, Scotland, Brazil. Oh, no, someone's going to kill me about that. I can't remember. But yeah, we've got a great game coming. I'm also looking forward to Toy Story 5. Star Wars is coming out with another film. And I'm sorry to say, Taylor Swift is getting married. So those are my look forward tos for 2026.
Angie, you didn't include Avengers Doomsday. That's the next biggest Avengers movie.
I didn't know that. I didn't even know that was coming down the pipeline.
And I'm a huge superhero movie fan, so Spider-Man is also coming out this year, so I'm looking forward to those two. But Mike, we'll talk about all that, but I wanted to ask you about the midterms. Mike, Angie raised the point of the redistricting case, and historically the president's party loses ground in the midterms, but Republicans remain hopeful. How do you think those elections will play out, Mike?
Yeah, you said it, Don, and the last part specifically, that history always shows data-wise that the party always flips, at least in one of the chambers, right? And so you've got so many different districts in play, some purplish seats. You've already got 40 plus members that have retired or said they're not doing this anymore. Marjorie Taylor Greene all the way on down. Who would have said that sentence right back in 24 or whenever? So, and I just saw something recent with Lauren Boebert getting upset with the president for not, weighing in on his or putting the kibosh on his bill that would have helped Colorado residents, or her bill, excuse me. So it's going to be interesting to see, Don, because, we've got some competitive races. And if we do get the House to flip, or if we get the Senate to flip, or if Republicans increase their majority, it's going to dictate what the last 2 years of the Trump presidency will look like. So I think 25 can't be an indicator because, as Angie and I have talked about ad nauseum, and again, this is something Democrats won't say on television, right? Like 25 elections are an off year in a lot of blue cities. And I get it, voter turnout with the Prop 50 stuff. I get it with Miami, but it's a small sliver. It's not Dade County, it's Miami itself. Going to Democrats, they want to prop that up and say, look at the victories, look at the pushback against Donald Trump. While I don't disagree with the latter, I disagree with the former because it's an off year and it's not truly indicative of how Republicans would turn out for the midterm elections. I think there's going to be more messaging about that. And I think there's going to be a lot more voter turnout. I mean, just look at the race right now happening in Texas with James Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett for the Democratic side of that ticket. I feel like that's probably going to be the most contested primary that I've seen in terms of voter turnout, how many people turn out just for that one, because of how much pub both of them are doing going to non-mainstream outlets. So I think the midterms are going to be something to watch, but it's going to set the precedent for the last 2 years. Is the Trump administration tied up because the chambers of Congress are all in Democratic favor and there's impeachment trials, which we've talked about? Or is it that the Republicans have increased their majority and now more of the president's legislation is passing through?
Okay, so Angie, I saw you nodding here and there. What are you thinking?
If Mike is going to make revelations about the Democratic Party that he doesn't want to say on air, I will say something about the Republican Party that we probably normally don't want to talk about. You have 55 seats and counting of retirements. You've never seen a larger exodus of Congress. The next 120 congressional makeup, the new freshman class is going to be the largest freshman class in history. So I'm nervous about this because you can't really predict which way all these races go. And we're also talking about, for both parties, 55 seats that we have to fill, and those are 55 races that we have to finance and put energy towards. That's going to be a really, really hard run. So when Elon Musk came out yesterday and said, "I'm going to finance these races," we're breathing a sigh of relief, because how else are you going to fundraise for 55 competitive seats? This is going to be a big, big mess, and there's really no predictors at this very on January 2nd. There's just no way we can tell which way these things go, because there's so much going on here. Money, campaigns, great candidates. We don't have a lot of time to do it. And on top of that, we have the redistricting that can flip everything upside down.
So, Mike, do you think Mamdani's first year in office will have any impact on the outcome of the midterms?
Don, I'm so glad you asked this question, because the package I played before me, I was shaking my head in disagreement to a lot of the things that were said there by Melina. I think it was Melina Weisskopf, but and I love you, Melina. But it's more or less like, I think there's going to be campaign ads if Mamdani fails in certain policy measures, and Angie's going to nod her head in a second, that Republicans will use to showcase how A, further left the party has moved, the Democratic Party, and B, why those policies don't work and what we can do. But the piggyback has to be something that the president does within these first 6, 7, 8 months that keeps attention for voters. So whether that be, and again, foreign policy tends to rank a little bit lower, but whether that be, something with the Ukraine-Russia war coming to a ceasefire, something from an economic standpoint that starts to put money back in people's pockets. If these things come to fruition and we get some type of economic, upturn with, let's say, jobs reports that start to come out, 6 figures month over month, then those issues piggybacked on top of whatever Mamdani does that could be considered a failure, could all of a sudden start to create this big campaign ad of like, look what the president's doing in DC, and then look at what, the biggest city in the world with democratic policies is doing and how it's failing. So I think that's the only inclination. I mean, look, for everyday New Yorkers, like me, who still has family there and is even thinking about moving back, like I'm looking to see what Mamdani does about rent. I'm looking to see what his pilot program does with the buses and some of these other ideas that he's had. He's rolled back some of the executive orders from Eric Adams. So I'm curious to see how some of that plays out, while still keeping some of the things like the Committee to Combat Anti-Semitism, which I think is important. So I'm curious to see what he does in his first term, but that's just because I'm a native New Yorker of 40 plus years. But I think Republicans are interested to see him fail, so that way they can use it for campaign ads. And I don't think Democrats are necessarily excited to see him succeed, because they haven't really, there's been such a tepid feeling of them trying to embrace him, from Hakeem Jeffries to Chuck Schumer all the way on down. So it's really damned if you do, damned if you don't for Mamdani.
Okay, so Angie, Mamdani said yesterday that his movement only just started. Same question to you. How do you view this?
What movement? And also, it's great fanfare. I think we don't even need to run campaigns. He ran a campaign for us yesterday already. He basically pedestaled AOC, Bernie Sanders, Letitia James. Those are the new faces of the Democrat Party. This is going to be fun for Republicans to run against that. The talking points are already built in. So I don't think we need to run. They're already running our campaign for us. What I'm worried about with Zoran Mamdani is that he's holding up a shiny object for all of us to stare at. And a lot of it is kind of woke ideology, a lot of religious stuff, a lot of anti-Semitism stuff as well. I don't think we should focus on that. We should look at what he did on day one, which is he signed 3 executive orders, and 2 of them, speed and lift, they basically decimate the wealth in New York. It's pulling away properties from property owners. It's taking wealth away from those who built the city into New York City the way it is now. So he is focused on destroying capitalism. Sorry, I spelled it out that way, but that's exactly how I almost have to say it, because people have to understand this is the agenda going forward with this group of politicians. And if we keep our eye on the shiny object, which is all the rage baiting that he does using algorithms and social media to make my friends go crazy because he's, revoked an EO from Eric Adams that removes the protection in faith-based places from protesters, well, we're going to focus on that. But what about all the other things that he's doing behind the scenes, which is really decimating Wall Street? Half of them have moved down to Miami, so we welcome them. But in reality, New York City is still the greatest financial city in the world. We cannot ever let that go.
Okay, I want to move on to a different subject now. I have a couple of them to get through here. Mike, how hopeful are you for a peace plan to be reached between Russia and Ukraine this year?
I mean, I'm very hopeful. I will say one thing. Obviously, you guys both know I don't agree with a lot of the president's policies, but I will echo something that Rich Ganell said in like one of the prelim interviews that happened, I believe, back in February when the new administration came in. And it was, we're going to talk to Russia, right? We're going to talk to Russia. The previous administration didn't. We're going to. So I give the president kudos for that. And, Marco Rubio obviously meeting with Sergei Lavrov in Saudi Arabia and the kickoff and all this. So I do give them credit for that. But the one thing I will say that drives me nuts, and again, I have a personal angle to this, Don. I used to work with a company that was based in Ukraine. A lot of engineers, when the war started, I got an email from one of the engineers that spooked me saying, I've got to run to shelter. I can't do this right now. So I have a little bit of a personal side to this, but be that as it may, the aggressor in all of this is Russia. Ukraine didn't invade Russia. If the argument and the counter is, well, Russia has to defend itself because NATO is increasing in power, there's a reason why NATO became two power. There's a reason why NATO was formed to stop somebody like a Putin from his aggression and going into other countries in that area, because we saw it in a previous war. If you don't get that, read a book. Like, I can't help you with that. So I wanted to say that because it's imperative that President Trump stop mixed messaging on this. He can in one instance say, Melania told me that they bombed, and then Putin said, we want to see them succeed. They don't want to see them succeed. They just attacked Kyiv the other day. So if you truly want to solve peace, the only way to go about it, which I do agree with, you have to talk to the aggressor in this, which is Russia. What do you want out of this? But you have to treat them as the aggressor. They invaded a sovereign country in Ukraine, not the other way around. That's the reason why this war is going on 4 years starting next month. And I think the president and his team, I think he's slowly starting to realize that, but the mixed messaging is still bad about this war. Am I hopeful for it, Don? I'm hopeful for everything in life because I'm a constant optimist, but I don't see any end in sight for this war because Vladimir Putin is not on the up and up on the negotiations.
Okay, well, President Trump says a peace deal is closer than ever. Angie, talk to us about this.
Wait and see. I don't believe that's actually the case, only because we've seen this movie over and over and over again, right? Everything from the Alaska summit to all the summits that we've had here in Florida. Putin doesn't have to stop. In fact, he's probably just doing the waiting game. He's probably waiting. He could wait this out the next 3 years until the next president if he wanted to. What we've seen over and over again is Vladimir Putin constantly nod his head, yes, I'll entertain the next, 18-point peace plan, 29-point peace plan, and then he does absolutely nothing about it and then bombs a building. Right. So we've seen this over and over and over again. I don't believe that there will be any changes unless both leaders, both Zelensky and Putin, are no longer in power. I think that's the only way forward if President Trump wants this to stop. There doesn't seem to be any real negotiation between the two. Yes, Marco Rubio and the whole team, they're doing a fantastic job. But when you're talking to adversary parties who don't really need to stop, there's really no pressure points. You can cut off their oil, you can cut off pipelines, you can cut off anything. They can keep going because this is not it's not a win for them unless both sides can have that sovereignty land, which they both believe that they naturally own. Putin believes that's part of Russia. So it's, until that ideology goes away or can be modernized, or this is not an art of the deal kind of negotiation. It's not like, oh, well, we promise you 10 casinos on this land and bring you economic, fruition. This is really about the core of what Putin wants, which is old Russia back. How is Zelensky going to be able to deliver that? He won't, because if Zelensky delivers that, he loses his next election. You have Ukrainian nationalists who will never give up their land. So this is where we're at. I would not be surprised if President Trump and his team walks away this year.
Okay, so Mike, we have to wrap up, but I did say at the beginning, I'll talk about what Angie said in her first response, so I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, what's your favorite movie that you're looking forward to in 2026?
Oh, well, Don, I can't do movie because I don't really know what movie. I mean, Toy Story, I am looking forward to that. I will say I am excited about the World Cup. It always falls around my wife's birthday, which she hates. But every 4 years, I get to celebrate. Like Angie mentioned, we'll be going to some of the matches, hopefully down here. So I'm excited to see the World Cup come back on U.S. soil and be able to go to matches and make my wife upset because I have to ignore her to watch some of these matches. We'll still celebrate her birthday, but we got to watch the World Cup. That comes first.
Well, all right. Good conversation today, you both. Thank you so much.
Happy New Year.
Thanks, Don.
The Small Business Administration says it has suspended nearly 7,000 Minnesota borrowers after uncovering what it calls widespread suspected pandemic loan fraud. The agency says it did a review of the Paycheck Protection Program and economic injury disaster loan records. The SBA says it identified almost $400 million in potentially fraudulent loans tied to Minnesota. Administrator Kelly Loeffler said those borrowers will be barred from all future SBA programs. She also said the agency will refer some cases to federal law enforcement for prosecution and repayment. The SBA has also halted more than $5 million in annual federal support to Minnesota resource partners while the investigation continues. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is facing mounting scrutiny over alleged fraud in state-administered programs. Walz has responded to concerns, saying his administration has spent years cracking down on fraud. A software error has made real IDs a real pain for hundreds of thousands of license holders in California. In a news release, the DMV said a proactive review of their records revealed a legacy system issue from 2006. They estimated about 325,000 Californians will now have to replace their real ID license. The DMV said they're contacting the impacted individuals with next steps and will be waiving fees for those affected. Officials noted that some legal immigrants received real IDs with no expiration dates that matched their authorization to remain in the country. Officials emphasized that no undocumented immigrants were issued real IDs. The error reportedly impacts about 1.5% of real ID holders in California. As 2026 begins, the country is already turning its attention to this year's midterm elections. Republicans are facing favorable odds in the Senate, where they currently hold a 53-47 advantage. But what will they have to do to hold on to the upper chamber? Here's a breakdown of some of the top Senate races.
Republicans and Democrats are touting talented candidates in the fight for Senate seats in 2026. But with Republicans holding a 53-47 advantage, Democrats are facing an uphill battle to take control. These days, Democrats are feeling confident following 2025 election victories. And because President Trump's approval rating, particularly on the economy, saw a significant drop last year.
His approval sinking as more and more Americans disagree with his handling of one of his signature issues, the economy.
That approval rating for the president, it is at a low point of his second term.
Republicans remain confident they will hold on to the Senate and improve the economy this year. Meanwhile, President Trump has touted economic wins.
Look, we have $18 trillion coming into our country. I believe we're going to have the most successful economy in history.
He credits his tariff deals for the extra cash. He's also made recent efforts to bring down energy pricing to reduce what he calls inherited inflation. Can these latest moves help Republican candidates and incumbents fend off Democratic challenges? Here are some of the top races to watch in 2026. First up, North Carolina. North Carolina's Republican Senator Tom Tillis is retiring. Former Democratic Governor Roy Cooper, former Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Whatley are running for the seat. President Trump won North Carolina 3 times, carrying the battleground state by 3 points in 2024. Democrats believe Cooper's popularity and winning record could change the red seat to blue. The Real Clear Politics average shows Cooper leading Whatley by 4.7 percentage points. Some experts say this race could set a new record for the most expensive Senate race in the country. Primary elections will be held on March 3rd. Next is Michigan. Democratic Senator Gary Peters is retiring. Republicans are hoping to win a key seat in this battleground state. Trump has endorsed former Congressman Mike Rogers. Democratic candidates are in a 3-way contest to win the primary and a chance to challenge Rogers. Candidates include Congresswoman Haley Stevens, Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow, and physician Abdul El Sayed. The primary election will be held on August 4th. In Georgia, Democratic Senator John Ossoff faces a competitive race. Trump won the state by 2.2% in 2024. Alongside fellow Georgia Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock, Ossoff won a runoff election in January 2021 that secured him a first term in Congress. He will have to fend off Republican lawmakers to hang on to his seat in 2026. Republicans vying for the nomination include U.S. Representatives Buddy Carter and Mike Collins, and former University of Tennessee football coach Derek Dooley. This race will be key in determining whether Democrats win control of the Senate. The race for Senate seats doesn't end with these 3 states. Key races in states like Ohio, Maine, and Iowa, and other matchups in key swing states are expected to be battles to the finish. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
New York City's new mayor Zohran Mamdani has signed several executive orders to roll back actions taken by his predecessor, Eric Adams. One order revokes all of Adams' executive orders since his indictment in September 2024 on federal corruption charges. Speaking at City Hall yesterday, Mamdani said that marked a moment when many New Yorkers decided politics held nothing for them. Adams became the first New York mayor to be indicted, though the Justice Department eventually dropped the case. The charges stemmed from allegations Adams took money from the Turkish government in order to facilitate a Turkish consulate in the city. Mamdani's team says it will revisit some of the revoked orders and reinstate them if it deems them essential. Republicans on Capitol Hill are doubling down on the failures of communism while painting Mayor Mamdani as the future of the Democratic Party. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
As part of a strategy to turn Democrat voters, Republicans are doubling down on messaging that New York City's Democrat Socialist mayor is the face of the Democratic Party. New York Republican Mike Lawler insisting that the Democratic Party is moving further to the left.
Those are the people that are actually leading the party in terms of policy and direction.
Lawler added that Mayor Mamdani will hold top Democrats hostage with the threat of primaries and candidates that he will endorse. It's the same messaging that Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson has repeatedly pushed since Mamdani's election. Meanwhile, top Democrats are rejecting the messaging.
Do you see Mamdani as the future of the Democratic Party?
No, I think the future of the Democratic Party is going to fall, as far as we're concerned, relative to the House.
Top Democrat leaders held off on endorsing Mamdani. The GOP conference chairwoman's reaction, reminding Americans of the horrors of communism. After Mamdani's inauguration, Chair Lisa McClain posted his speech with the caption, "Communism has failed everywhere it has been tried. New York City will be no different." The founder of communism, Karl Marx, stated that the first phase of communism is socialism. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
New York State says flu cases have spiked, reporting the most flu cases ever recorded in 1 week. Joining us to discuss is Dr. Sogol Ash, integrative and functional medicine doctor. So, Dr. Ash, good afternoon. Happy New Year to you. I'm wondering if you can give us your analysis on this surge. Which group is most at risk?
Absolutely. So yeah, we are seeing one of the most aggressive flu seasons in years. And, we're seeing these record-breaking cases in New York. It's because we're seeing an H3N2 strain that spreads really fast, it hits hard, and it overwhelms the immune system, especially if an immune system is already stressed. So people higher at risk are those who are getting poor sleep, who are stressed, nutrient depleted, anyone over the age of 65 who's immunocompromised, maybe has asthma. Absolutely, pregnant women and children are also at higher risk.
What are the common flu symptoms that usually appear if a person is infected?
We usually see fever. We see sore throat, cough, a lot of that upper respiratory kind of symptoms. Those are some of the big ones. You'll often see also what I've been seeing with this flu is body aches is a big one as well. Headaches, migraines, and a feeling of just weakness and fatigue.
Okay, I'm wondering here, if a family member is showing these symptoms, what should the other members do, or what should the person do?
Great question. So if a family member in the home is showing symptoms, what you want to do, if you're exposed, absolutely support the immune system. So I like to support the immune system with things like vitamin C. It's antiviral. It can also help shorten the duration of illness. Zinc can also block viral replication. Taking vitamin D, we know how important vitamin D is for the immune system and can also reduce severity. I also like NAC. It helps protect the lungs, especially when we see a big lingering cough with the flu. So they help the immune system really work correctly. Same goes for someone who has the flu. When someone has the flu right now, because it is so aggressive, we're seeing things like Tamiflu, Xofluza. We have antivirals that help a lot, but you want to take them within 48 hours. So they work best if you take them within 48 hours of showing symptoms. They reduce the severity. They also reduce complications in high-risk patients. Antibiotics don't really work for the flu unless there's a secondary bacterial infection. So that's not where you want to go. And the antivirals, like we just said, Tamiflu, Xofluza, can help. They don't replace immune support, though. So everyone should be taking some sort of immune support, vitamin C and D and the things we just talked about. Also getting rest. So our immune cells regenerate during sleep. You don't want to push through. If you feel the symptoms, don't think of rest as laziness. It's really medicine for your immune system. And keeping things like hydration up, using broth, using electrolytes, warm fluids, kind of helps thin the mucus and support the detox pathways.
Okay, so doctor, in addition to those steps that you just brought up, is there a need for other family members who are potentially living under the same roof to keep their distance? Is that even necessary?
It's helpful. It really depends, right? It depends if someone's been exposed, they've been exposed. And depending on their immune system, if they're going to get the virus, they're going to get the virus, right? But keeping their distance is absolutely helpful, right? So if you're close enough to someone where you could smell their perfume, that's probably too close, right? So keeping a distance, wearing a mask is absolutely helpful. All of these can help lower the viral load. And having proper ventilation as well can reduce viral load too.
Right, absolutely. Dr. Ash, since we're in the holiday season still, maybe potentially a lot of people are traveling, does that increase the risk of flu catching it?
Absolutely, because you're exposed to just more people, right? People are traveling, the exposure is higher, especially when we have so many viral illnesses going around right now. People are getting exposed to places and people that they probably wouldn't if they weren't traveling. So it absolutely will increase risk. So wearing a mask does help. Washing your hands, as basic as it is, still works. Staying home if you do feel symptoms is one of the best ways. Getting an annual flu shot can reduce severity and complications if people are getting that or are curious about that. But absolutely, when you're traveling, I always like to take wipes with me. I sanitize the seat when I'm on a plane. If you want to wear a mask, that helps too. So those are some of the main things, but you don't want to be fear-mongering. It is the flu and it's okay. It happens. But keeping your immune system up is going to be one of the best things.
Okay, Dr. Ash, just one last question. If somebody is considering getting vaccinated for the flu, is there any need if they already got sick and recovered?
If they already got sick and recovered, they have the antibodies. I personally don't recommend it once they've already had it. It depends on the patient and it depends on their, vulnerability. If they are older in age and highly immunocompromised, then at that point, absolutely, it can still help. If someone is younger and more resilient, it may not be as necessary, right, in this season. It really depends on the person and how their system is functioning. If they're under a lot of stress, if they're not sleeping, if they are not taking care of themselves, that's still a good time to get vaccinated.
Okay, Dr. Ash, thank you so much for giving us your tips today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Elon Musk's X platform is getting involved in a First Amendment legal battle over a bathroom photo. X's legal team is taking on the case of a Texas woman under investigation for retweeting a picture of a man who identifies as a woman in a women's bathroom. NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with the woman, Williamson County Republican Party Chair Michelle Evans, about the case.
It all started back in May of 2023. Michelle Evans was at the Texas Capitol for the third House debate for a bill which eventually banned cross-sex surgeries and procedures for Texas kids.
Oh, here we go.
Evans says the atmosphere was chaotic during the first two House floor debates. She says trans activists screamed. One hit her on her hand when she was trying to exit the area, with police arresting some protesters. During a break at the hearing in question, Evans says a man entered a woman's bathroom.
I told him, next time use the men's bathroom across the hall, to which he replied, well, I'm legally a woman. And I said, basically, that's not a thing. Use the men's restroom.
Back in the House gallery, Evans says a friend of hers sent her a Facebook post with a photo someone had taken of the man fully dressed in the bathroom, standing at the sink.
I tweeted it out, and I just had a caption that said, hey, there's little girls here on a school field trip. It's not appropriate for men to be in the women's restroom.
The image went viral, and Travis County District Attorney Jose Garza decided to prosecute the case. Under Texas law, it is illegal to photograph someone in, quote, a place in which a person has a reasonable expectation of privacy.
Next thing I know, I'm told that this is a potential sex crime investigation, that DA Garza was interested in investigating me for a state jail felony sex offense.
Evans filed a lawsuit to stop the investigation. Last month, the Fifth Circuit issued an initial 2-1 opinion that said DA Garza can continue on with the investigation. Evans and her legal team argue the retweet was protected free speech as a political statement.
This was a man who had announced that he was running for Texas House, so he was an announced politician. The person who took the photo believed that she was documenting a crime. This man was entering a women's only space intentionally without our consent, and was violating our privacy and safety by coming into that space.
Evans says she feels duty-bound to speak up when something happens that she believes could put other women or girls in harm's way in the future.
Silent dissent is misinterpreted as consent, and you can't consent for all women on behalf of yourself and all women. So I thought that it was important at that moment to say something to him to his face, and then also to let the world know that the Capitol was allowing this to happen.
The Republican Party chair says the ex-court legal team reached out to her attorney the Sunday before Christmas and later announced this week they were supporting her case. Evans is still paying her own legal fees for her personal attorney. The Travis County Prosecutor's Office responded sharply to X's involvement, criticizing the platform, saying it backs users who post photos of others in bathrooms without their consent. Evans feels that the core of the case centers on the question of whose consent really matters in a women's-only space.
Does the consent of the women in that women's only space, the space that we have a right to be in, does that matter more, or does the supposed right of a trans activist to make a statement of his own by entering a facility that he knew he did not have a right to enter? Does his consent matter more than the women?
In closing, Republican Party Chair Michelle Evans says free speech is there to protect unpopular opinions the most. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
America will celebrate 250 years of independence this year in July. President Trump has pledged to give America the most spectacular birthday party the world has ever seen for this occasion. NTD's Daniel Monahan takes a look at what to expect this year as part of the festivities.
America. Celebrations kicked off on New Year's Eve with the projection of images depicting the country's history on the Washington Monument and will continue throughout the year.
Our nation began not as an idea invented in the minds of men, but as a land discovered.
The illumination will take place through January 5th. The 25-minute projection displays will recur at the top of each hour every night and feature 5 themed segments including Discovery, Revolution, and Westward Expansion. America has already had big celebrations to commemorate the 250th birthdays of the Army, the Navy, and the Marines, but President Trump promised in a December address that there's much more to come. From June 25th to July 10th, Washington, D.C. will host the Great American State Fair on the National Mall.
featuring pavilions from all 50 states, highlighting breathtaking innovations and celebrating America's exceptional history and culture.
The first ever Patriot Games will be hosted in the autumn.
An unprecedented 4-day athletic event featuring the greatest high school athletes, one young man and one young woman from each state and territory. But I promise there will be no men playing in women's sports. You're not going to see that.
Trump says a National Garden of American heroes will be built,
featuring statues of all-time greatest Americans,
as well as a triumphal arch.
We're going to have one in Washington, D.C. very soon. Construction will start in the very near future.
The president says in spring the Capitol will host a major prayer event on the National Mall to rededicate the country as one nation under God.
We're not changing that. There are a lot of people who would like to see it. It'll never happen.
And on Flag Day, a major UFC event will be held at the White House.
It'll be the greatest champion fighters in the world, all fighting that same night. The great Dana White is hosting, and it's going to be something special.
Interior Secretary Doug Burgum says the 250th anniversary gives America the opportunity to think about unity and our shared future, speaking on Good Morning America.
It's not about the perfection of our country, it's about the aspiration. That's what makes us the greatest country in the world, because we keep aspiring to be better and better.
President Trump has also announced the U.S. 250 Freedom Tour. Trump says the coast-to-coast free tour aims to celebrate the patriotism, pride, and pioneering spirit of America and lay the groundwork for the next 250 years. It will kick off in Nevada on January 9th with free concerts by Shenandoah and Natasha Owens and a fireworks display. And on July 4th, Freedom 250 will commemorate the nation's 250th birthday with Salute to America on the National Mall during the Great American State Fair. The event will have a military flyover, an address by Trump, and the largest fireworks display in the world, according to Freedom 250. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
President Trump's motorcade was in Florida today, with the president taking a look at stone for the new White House ballroom. Images showed the president's limousine outside arc stone and tile in Lake Worth Beach. A White House official said that the president is going with marble and onyx and is purchasing it at his own expense. The choice comes as the National Trust for Historic Preservation sues to halt the project. In its lawsuit, the nonprofit argues that the proposed 90,000 square foot space would overshadow the rest of the 55,000 square foot White House. The judge in the case declined to issue a temporary restraining order last month to pause work on the project. Trump has said the new ballroom will cost $400 million and is being funded by private donors. President Trump vowed to breathe new life into the nation's cultural crown jewel, overseeing sweeping changes from programming to architecture. NTD's correspondent, Mari Otsu, takes us through the transformations already underway and what's ahead for this iconic institution.
Less than a month after taking office, President Trump vowed to restore the nation's cultural center, ushering in his vision for a golden age of American arts and culture.
And we're restoring the Kennedy Center as the premier venue for performing arts anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world.
He appointed a new board who elected him chairman, then secured over $250 million in federal funding for renovations under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
We have completely reversed the decline of this cherished national institution. We had a lot of donors come in for record-setting numbers, so we saved the Kennedy Center.
In December, the board voted unanimously to rename the place the Trump Kennedy Center, and President Trump became the first sitting president to host the Kennedy Center honors.
Welcome to a very special evening and one of the most important evenings in the American cultural realm, and we're bringing this building back to life like nobody ever thought was even possible.
President Trump describes the transformation as necessary to eliminate political elements, restore excellence, and highlight traditional performances.
We also changed the programming so that it was common sense programming.
You know, and it's about character in the end. It's about realizing that your traditions and the things that are part of your heritage need to be celebrated and preserved.
The Trump Kennedy Center hosts multiple venues with diverse programming this month. In the concert hall, the National Symphony Orchestra presents Brahms' Piano Concerto No. 1, followed by Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring. Meanwhile, next week in the Opera House, New York-based Shenyun Performing Arts brings its production featuring classical Chinese dance.
What we portray with Shenyun is a traditional Chinese culture, the real traditional Chinese culture, China before communism. And that is what the CCP is afraid of to have the world see, to see how wonderful and how knowledgeable and great the Chinese people were without this totalitarian government repressing them.
Shenyun has a live orchestra featuring both Eastern and Western instruments and seeks to reconnect viewers with China's authentic heritage. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Mariotsu, NTD News.
Performance that truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. See it at least once in your lifetime. Shenyun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.